All right. Sorry, I stole Steven Crowder's intro. I just wanted to well, I'll get to that second. I just wanted to say if you guys live in front of an internet audience. Hello. Hello, Lisa. I see you in the chat. Hello. Um I'm telling you guys, if you guys don't hate me by now and haven't unsubscribed, this is going to be that day. Today's the day. Uh, please don't. But today is when we're gonna talk about some dicey stuff. We're gonna talk about Chris Llewellyn today, and the things that he's been talking about. But that's gonna be a little bit later on in the show. Um, we're gonna get to that. It is the main topic for today, but that's coming later. The reason why I stole Steven Crowder's intro is because I just wanted to give a little shout out to my workplace. This is a little mug that some some free merchandise that I got. Yeah, it says "Shut up and pour." Haphazard Press. They make merch, posters, T-shirts for artists and local businesses. I guess they don't have to be local. They once made a poster for the movie It. So yeah, I'm repping them on my torso. Born a Scoundrel, haphazard press. So yeah, I just wanted to give them a shout out. They're not sponsoring this episode. I don't know if anyone would want to sponsor this episode. Probably picked a bad day for them to yeah. And it sounds like your voice is coming through the other microphone. Yeah, hold on a second. Check. Forgot about that episode. About that microphone. Check. Hello. How's that? Does it sound any better? I'm being told that my microphone is not that loud. Also, hello, Steven. If you can hear me. I'm glad that you're joining the episode. I'm answering your question today, but that'll unfortunately be later on in the episode. That sounds better. Okay, cool. I did crank it up a little bit, so if it sounds too loud, let me know. Hopefully not. Okay, well, hopefully I didn't botch that intro, and hopefully you guys heard something, some of the things that I said. Also, intro music by John Bartman at johnbartman.com. You can check out his royalty-free music. And also today we are joined by Dawes' album, Nothing Is Wrong. Ain't that the truth? Amen. Hallelujah. Nothing is wrong. Great album. Steven says, cool. Cool. I guess a little bit of housekeeping. Not really. Actually, there's hardly any housekeeping. Just wanted to say that I'm still working on trying to get... We could hear it. It was just quiet. Okay, cool. Rough start to the episode, but we're doing good. I'm still trying to get a Twitch channel going so that we can go live. I'm looking into that. I'm also thinking about interesting things that I can do on Twitch, like some gaming. Don't worry, I'm actually not much of a gamer, but I thought, like, you know what? One game that I love to play is Stronghold. So I've been thinking about just doing some hangouts on Twitch just to get some more people interested into the channel, and I think that could be fun. Also, we are having a Q&A at the end of this episode, and I do have one question already from the last episode that I'm going to be addressing. But if anyone in the chat has any particular questions, leave them right now. Just preface it that it's a question for the Q&A. Somehow you can just put like question, semicolon, and then put the question. But if you guys missed the live stream and you're watching this later, you can always leave a question in the comments so that I can address it in the next episode, in the next Q&A. Please feel free. I just love interacting with you guys, so it's just a fun way for me to do that. No reviews, and there weren't really any responses to my questions and polls on Spotify. So we can just skip that. And we can just get right into the news. Lisa says, yes, do Stronghold on Twitch. I think that could be fun, especially since Stronghold is such a niche game that I'm sure there's going to be some people that are going to be looking for Stronghold Let's Players. So I don't know. It could be fun. And I don't know when I'm going to do it. We'll see. I just think it could be fun and a fun way to get more people interacting with this channel. But we'll see. So couple of things. We are talking about Chris Llewellyn from Rend Collective today. First, just a couple things that I felt that needed to be addressed first. And I'm just going to talk about them real quick. Audio feed. If you guys aren't familiar with Audio Feed is a music festival that started from basically the same family that was running, I mean, not literal family, but kind of like the same people that was running Cornerstone Festival, RIP. I wish that I went to Cornerstone, and I still haven't gone to Audio Feed, but I may be doing it this year. And they just announced their lineup, and I just kind of wanted to briefly mention it, especially the ones that I know personally. Headlining it is Pedro the Lion. Dave Bazan, if you're familiar with him, he's the headliner. We also got Rosie Thomas. I'm actually not familiar with Rosie Thomas, but cool. Flatfoot 56. I didn't listen to Flatfoot 56, but I'm familiar with them, that punk kind of music. So that's fun. I think they've done Audio Feed before. Randy Stonehill is also joining, and that's a legend from Christian music. He's going to be playing. Propaganda. I'm familiar with Propaganda. I've seen his shows before. He's a very I love his creativity when it comes to hip hop music. Undercover, David Eugene Edwards. He's from Wovenhand. Huntingtons. Eric Clayton. I'm just kind of breezing through it. Listener. That's actually Lisa says she listened to Flatfoot 56. Well, yeah, you would probably enjoy Audio Feed. Listener is a favorite of mine, particularly. I've been a fan of them for a while. I love their like spoken word kind of music, kind of very inspired by Me Without You, but still different. A lot of people have made that comparison, so I apologize to any Listener or Me Without You fans. Stonehill, yes, I know, right? I'm going to be talking in a music review section about the compilation album that was released recently. But yeah, he's got some great stuff. Levi the Poet is actually probably my personal, like, actual favorite in this lineup, and I'm really excited. I love his work. I love his album Transcendence. Some great spoken word stuff, and it's not just like just straight spoken word. Like there's a lot of creativity goes into the music behind it. And so I'm excited about Levi the Poet. Another particular special one is V8 Vast Change. And the reason why that's kind of special to me is because I know that person, Dominic Stevenson. I went to youth group with him, and he's a part of the lineup for Audio Feed. And I think he's done it before. I think he's done Audio Feed before. I don't know. But that's still exciting. And so that's just some of them. You can go to Audio Feed Fest's social media and such that they've posted the lineup and everything, so you can check out all the other ones. There's a ton of artists, and this isn't even like all of them, because they have a stage where people can come, where it's basically kind of like an open mic. So that's like a great place to discover up and coming artists over there. So, and I wanted to bring it up really quick because I'm interested in making a video on Audio Feed. I'm interested in going and bringing my camera and possibly, if I can make connections, talking to some of the artists there, or maybe even talking to some of the festival goers over there. The problem is that I'm not sure what angle I want to go at. I'm trying to figure out like what the purpose of me making a video on Audio Feed would be. Because the thing is that like I'm for Audio Feed, but I've been a little confused as to like what the festival is. Like, it's not Cornerstone. Is it a Christian festival? The reason why I asked that is because their headliner is Pedro the Lion, who is not Christian anymore. And this isn't just my personal opinion. He has denounced his faith. And so it makes me wonder, like, well, is Audio Feed a Christian festival? Is there a bit more to it? And I guess my initial thought is to, like, it would be fun if I could connect with the artists and the people at Audio Feed Festival and ask them, like, what do they think that Audio Feed is? What is the purpose of Audio Feed? And I don't want it to be like a hit piece or anything, because I have friends who go to Audio Feed and they love it, and like I'm all for like what they do. I guess I just want to do. I'm interested to do a little bit of journaling, but I wanted to bring it up because like I'm interested to know what you guys' thoughts are on that. So feel free to like leave a comment or leave something in the chat what you think would be an interesting idea for a video. So either way, I still want to go and just like have fun and watch all the shows over there. We'll see. Hopefully I can make it happen, because if I'm going to go, I'd like to go for the whole thing, which is a multiple day thing. I think it's like a whole weekend. So we'll see. I'd have to like buy a hotel room, and we'll see if I can fit that in my budget. But yeah, anyways, Audio Feed Festival. Steven says, actually, what is Audio Feed is an excellent place to start. Okay. Yeah, I think so. I think making a video without like it having an angle with it is just to find out like, okay, this is what Audio Feed is. Take with it what you will. So yeah, that might just be what I do. So we'll see. Fingers crossed that I can make it happen. Lisa says, I agree with Steven. I didn't even know that it existed. Yeah. It's really big for like people around my age who are into that kind of culture, you know. Also, it happens right here in Illinois. It goes on in Champaign. My buddy Cedric actually has taken photos over there, and they use a lot of his photos for their promotional material. So that's really cool. So yeah, more on Audio Feed later. Gonna take another sip of my not coffee. It's actually not coffee. I'm sorry. If you feel that I was lying to you, it's just water. Because water is best to have when you're doing a show. Next big news. I said that I was going to try my best to not talk about this with every little update, but it's kind of still relevant. But Hillsong, I'm going to talk real quick about Hillsong because, I should pull up their post. As long as my computer doesn't lag out. Hillsong Worship pulled out of, so one of the things that's confusing about Hillsong is that they have all their different bands and ministries. They have Hillsong United, they have Hillsong Worship, they have Hillsong Young and Free, and sometimes it's really hard for me to know how different they are. Like, are they different or are they separate? Blah, blah, blah. So Hillsong Worship was supposed to be on a tour with Casting Crowns and We the Kingdom. And in light of, of course, what we talked about in the last episode concerning their the docu-series that came out, in light of all the controversy, they have decided to pull out of the tour. And they made a statement on social media. I'm sorry, I should have had it pulled up, but I didn't. But I'm going to now. They made a statement on their social media basically saying how, in light of all the controversy, they are taking a break so that people can heal. So that people on their team can heal. Okay, here's their statement. With the generous and gracious support of our friends and partners, Casting Crowns and Premier Productions, Hillsong Worship has asked to be withdrawn from the upcoming Casting Crowns Hillsong Worship Tour with We the Kingdom. Whilst we are deeply disappointed to have to make this difficult decision, we do feel that it is the right one at this time in our history, and the decision that for us requires the most faith. Uniquely, Hillsong Worship is not and has never been a band. We are an extension of and expression of Hillsong Church, a collective of our local church worship teams. All of us are either on staff at Hillsong Church or volunteers at our local campuses. Right now, our church is walking through some difficult days and navigating significant change. Yeah, that's no crap. Our community is hurting, but hope-filled. With the full support and endorsement of our senior church leadership, we believe the decision not to go on tour this month is the one that puts the health and well-being of the people of our team first. Now is the time for us to humbly seek the Lord, to grieve in hope, and to heal in community together. We are devastated to have to withdraw from this tour we have been planning and praying into for over a year, to let down our friends Casting Crowns, We the Kingdom, and Premier Productions, who mean the world to us, and to let down all of you who are planning on coming. We are so sorry. We would love to encourage you to hold on to your ticket and head along to these nights, which are going to be so full of life, joy, encouragement, and God's presence. We know you will be ministered to too deeply by the Lord through our friends Casting Crowns and We the Kingdom, who are absolutely incredible. God bless you all. We truly look forward to worshiping with you again and celebrating what the Lord has done in our midst as we fully surrender to his will and purposes. Yeah. I personally think that's an okay move on their part. First of all, this is never fun. I do feel sorry for everyone who is in this right now. All the people involved, all the people who are in Hillsong, and all the members of the church. Those are the people that I feel most sorry for. I do not rejoice in all the negativity and hurt that this is causing. I feel bad for them because not everyone is involved in the scandal, in the controversy. I think there is a whole systematic problem that's going on in the church, and I think it's a good idea for the church to just kind of sit back and be like, okay, what what do we do? How do we recover from this? And what are our steps moving forward? What do we need to do to change? I think that's a good idea. But yeah, this is never fun, and I don't rejoice in this. But I think that it is the right move on Hillsong Worship's part. However, Hillsong United is also on their own tour with Chris Tomlin, and they've made the decision to go on. Joel Houston is who is Brian Houston's son, is still, they're still going. They've decided to keep on going, and I don't really understand that. But basically, at Amway Center in I don't know where that is. I think that's in Orlando. Joel basically gave this whole 8-minute speech about their decision. And this article kind of gives a little, like, kind of snipped up version of it. The world was a very different place back then. God was the same then as he is now. For everyone in some way, the last couple of years has been real tricky. That's what Joel Houston said. The worship leader revealed that the tour had been postponed 4 or 5 times, but added that he knows everyone came together during this time for a reason. And then he goes on to say, if worship was only about the mountaintops, then yeah, this wouldn't be a good time for us. One thing I'm certain of is that worship is not reserved for the mountaintop. Worship is our response in the valleys. Worship is our response in the trenches. Worship is our response when the whole world is falling apart. Worship is our response when there's nothing else to hang on to. Worship is our response in the fire. He says, the truth is, there is a God who is and will be forever faithful, and his grace is always good. He doesn't flinch when the world falls apart. He's not shocked by anything that might shock us. He's had a plan all the way through, and he continues to make a way. He's always redemptive. He's always reconciling. He's always restoring. There's power in coming to him from whatever background, whatever is going on in our world, wherever we are. And yeah, he kind of just goes on, and I watched the video, and I'm not going to play it for you. I mean, you can check it out on YouTube. Joel Houston on tour with Hillsong United. That's the name of the video. And basically, it's just kind of, you know, he gives this speech and everyone is like cheering and like, oh, yeah, that's so good. And I just don't know how to feel about that. I don't know how Hillsong Worship has made this decision to step down, but Hillsong United is not. And I just feel weird listening to Joel's speech, because if you watch the docuseries, there is a part where Brian is being like, yeah, everything that's been happening. Sorry, I'm kind of trying to go into my Australian accent. I'll try not to. Everything that's happening is all because, the devil wants to take us down, and, God is still good. God is still faithful. And it just seems kind of a way to like manipulate people and use their faith in God, and their just their faith in general to be a way to be like, to get them on their side. And it just feels weird. And I just honestly feel like that the leaders in Hillsong need to not be talking in public about these things, because they don't know how their message what they're trying to say can be construed. I think it's just healthier in this whole situation to not say anything and to reevaluate what's going on and then move from there. It just feels weird to hear Joel Houston being like, yeah, we know all these terrible things are happening, but we're going to continue on because God is still, I mean, it's true. God is still good. God is still faithful. But, and at the same time, you have people on your team who I'm sure don't know what to think. And so that's why I also agree with Hillsong Worship in making the decision that they did to step down so that people can heal, I just don't know. And maybe I don't know exactly what I'm saying, but I just don't know how this is helpful for anyone. And I just still get, ever since watching the docuseries, I get this icky feeling about Hillsong and like anyone involved. And like, I'm sure not everyone in Hillsong is a bad guy, you know. It's just hard to know, and it's hard to trust, and it's hard to trust what Joel is saying. And I just think that, I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think? We can talk about that later. Maybe leave that as a question. What you guys think should be done, and what the right response is moving forward. I just don't. I feel weird about it, and that's all I'm gonna say. But Hillsong Worship has canceled their tour, but Hillsong United has not. And I don't know how I feel about that. So, anyways, I just wanted to talk about those things very briefly. And if you wanted to know more of my thoughts on the whole Hillsong situation, you can listen to or watch the last episode regarding Hillsong Exposed, the docuseries and everything going on there. Since I've covered those things, I think now would be a good time to go into a break, a really quick break, and we'll be back right after these messages, even though for everyone watching live, there is no messages. But yeah, we're just going to take a quick break. Please don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after a minute. So please don't leave. I'm lonely. Okay, we'll be right back.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
All right, we're coming back now. We're back. I know that wasn't a long break. I really just, I went into the break and I kind of just sat here dancing along with the music. There wasn't really anything that I needed to do. Sometimes I take a potty break, but I didn't really feel the need this time. So I'm like, the reason why we have to go to break is because in the podcast version, we have an ad break, and that's like a great spot for us to just, cut right there for the ad breaks, then just come back. So, but usually in real life, I don't really have much to do. So I just kind of sat here jamming along to the music. But now we're back. And now we're going to get to it. The meat and potatoes. the main course, the main topic of what we're going to talk about. Chris Llewellyn. The reason why I always say his name weird, like Llewellyn, is because I think the only Llewellyn that I know that I can think of is from No Country for Old Men. And if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend that film. It's a great film by the Coen brothers. And the main character, played by Josh Brolin, his name is Llewellyn. And his little wife, played by Kelly MacDonald, she has this little southern voice, and she always has this concerned kind of voice and says his name, like Llewellyn. I just don't know about this Llewellyn. And it's super cute. So I'm sorry, Chris, but that's just the reputation that your name has for me personally. So, for those of you guys who don't know, Chris Llewellyn is from the folk Christian band Rend Collective. And I used to listen to them for a time when I was getting into folk music. I think I got excited because it was like, oh, this is like folk music, but Christian. And I will admit that I don't know if I think Chris Llewellyn is the lead singer. But I think the novelty kind of died off on me because I realized that Rend Collective was just kind of like, they seemed like they were trying too hard to be like the Mumford and Sons or the Lumineers of Christian music, and the music wasn't really as interesting to me personally. That's just my feeling. I haven't listened to them in a long time, but maybe you guys are fans, and that's really cool. Some of their music I like. But let's see. I'm kind of looking up. I really should just do this research beforehand. Chris Llewellyn, lead vocals. Yes, so he is the lead vocalist for Rend Collective. Okay, now that we have this information. And they're from Ireland. At least Chris is. I don't know about the whole band. But, so Chris Llewellyn has an Instagram account that he frequently posts to. A lot of times he's talking about things regarding Christianity and faith and all that kind of stuff. It's not really like deep stuff from what I could gather. It's kind of just like basic and, kind of so. But that's just me being judgmental. I'm sorry, it's my job is to be critical and judgmental and a mean person. But this happened a few weeks ago. I know we're always on top of things here at the I'm Clifford Today show. He made a post in his story regarding, and this is why this is going to get dicey here. And if you haven't unsubscribed to this channel, this is probably going to be the day that you do it, because we're going to be talking on the subject of transgenders, and transgenders in sports. And today you're going to get a little bit of taste of my feelings on that. I'm going to do my best not to make this episode about transgenderism or whatever. I'm going to be as delicate as possible, but it's all Chris Llewellyn's fault. This was his idea. So he made a post in his story on Instagram, and here it is right here. Regarding the whole Leah Thompson situation. That's how you know that this was a few weeks ago. of Leah Thompson getting first in the swimming thing. Whatever it was. I forget. The Olympic swimmers. Is that what it was? Wow. I'm an idiot sometimes, and I just don't really know what I'm talking about sometimes. So why do you watch this? Why do you watch this show? So he made a post, and he said, however, and he was like sharing a post of someone being like, this man got first place in the swimming championship. Emphasis on this man. And Chris responded by saying, however you feel about the implications for sports, a wider conversation for sure. Calling a trans woman a man is hateful, unkind. Don't participate in this kind of speech. History won't be kind to you. Them's fighting words, Chris. And of course, it raised a little bit of a hubbub on social media. I'm sure he had a lot of people responding. That's the thing about Instagram stories, is that you can't really see all the conversations happening unless the person responds again publicly, which Chris did. And he made another story post. So I don't know if he made any other posts about it. I must have missed them, but this was an actual screenshot that I took of his story. And he responds with one last thing about this thread before I move on with my life. Hundreds of comments in my DMs saying I've abandoned the created order or God's design. Never said a word about that. All assumption. I said it was hateful to apply a label to this individual that they find offensive. It's the vitriol I reject, not diversity of opinion of a complicated and new subject. God's design for the church is to be a sanctuary and protection for anyone who is being kicked to the curb. I stand by that as the most orthodox traditional belief there is, the simplest interpretation of love your neighbor and the parable of the Good Samaritan. So he made that response and left it alone. He left the whole thing alone for a few days. And just a comment on that response, I feel like that there are a lot of Christians out there who feel like they're always about, oh, Jesus, we need to be all about Jesus and what he does, and that's how we need to live our lives. Yeah, true. But by the way that they talk, it seems that they think that all Jesus was can just be summed up to love your neighbor and be kind to others. While that's true, some people just seem to have a really shallow view of what love looks like, and a really shallow view of what Jesus' ministry was all about. And sometimes I feel like, and this isn't the case for everyone, but sometimes I feel like people nitpick maybe we're all guilty of this, but they nitpick the things that they like about Jesus' ministry, and they just ignore the things that they don't like. And so they pick those nice, good things, and they're like, this is what Jesus is about. And I just find that to be shallow theology, and not how, that's just not the big picture. And it seems like that Chris is being a little guilty of this, but we'll get into that, because he left this alone for a few days, and then he made a video going back to the whole subject again. So we're going to watch that real quick.
Hey, I just wanted to jump on here and kind of clarify and clean up how people have responded to some of the things I put in stories earlier on this week. So here's what I believe. I believe that my call as a Christian is to love God and love my neighbor. Those are the two greatest commandments. I believe that the LGBTQ plus community is my neighbor, and so I need to treat them with dignity and respect and compassion and love. What this doesn't necessarily mean is I have to agree or that it comes at the expense of truth-telling. I don't think that everybody has to agree. I just think that we need to treat each other with dignity and compassion and love. I think that's what being Christ-like means. And that was what I was trying to say.
Okay, but that isn't everything that you said, though. I doubt that Chris Llewellyn is actually going to check this out, watch this video or anything. But in case, because it's a small world, you said that calling a trans woman a man is hateful, and I mean, and maybe you misspoke, but basically saying that, like, anyone saying this, like, that it's hateful. And here's the thing, is that I think that there is some gray area when it comes to this conversation. And he hasn't really said anything that's like outright one side or the other. I think he's really, walking the line and like being very careful. And there are things that I agree with him on, that, like, yes, we need to be loving and respectful. We don't want to be jerks, but we need to talk about, like, what love looks like. And this has kind of been an ongoing conversation when it comes to how do Christians how do Christians deal with the whole topic of, like, pronouns and such. And Doug Wilson is a minister that I respect. I have a lot of respect for. I think he's very wise, and he's a man of God, and I tend to agree with a lot of the things that he says. And there's a short little video of him on the topic from a couple years ago, so it's not like in response to the Chris Llewellyn thing, but more about this pronoun conversation.
Well, one question I have about that is, so say a Christian says, I acknowledge the creational reality that God created us male and female.
Right.
I acknowledge that that's good. But I want to, out of love for my neighbor, use the pronouns that they prefer. And so I have a friend that was born a male, is now identifying as a female. Out of love for them, should I use the feminine pronoun for them?
That's like saying, I believe that God made sugar and that sugar is good. And yet, out of love for my neighbor, I want to let him put cyanide in his coffee if he calls it sugar.
It's a very striking analogy.
You don't, out of love for your neighbor, refuse to tell him at 2 a.m. that his house is on fire. Love for your neighbor means speaking the truth to your neighbor. So what happens is people say, because I want to be nice. They value being nice over being true. And so what they're saying is, because I love my neighbor, I want to lie to him. Mm. For the next 10 years, I'm going to lie to him. Mm. And I'm sorry, love does not lie. Right? If you want to say, I love him and therefore I will tell him lies, what you're actually saying is, I love myself, and if I tell him the truth, I'm going to be in trouble.
That it's like a sub-biblical love. It's something other than love, because love rejoices in the truth.
Right. So in Proverbs, it says the man who refuses to discipline his son hates his son. Mm. But the Bible there is talking about the impact of the father's actions, not necessarily the emotion that drove him to refuse to discipline his son. Oftentimes, a father who doesn't discipline his son is being sentimental or too emotional about it. He would call what he's doing love. But the Bible says it translates into hate. Mm. Right? The one who doesn't discipline his son hates his son, regardless of how he feels about it emotionally. So if you have your heart goes out to someone who's confused on the pronouns and who's demanding that you use the pronouns that they have assigned to themselves, if you go along with that, that's the last thing you are, is loving.
Yeah, so that's Doug Wilson right there. And to go on top of that, we're talking about truth and talking about how love demands truth. There was so for those of you who don't know, I'm a big fan of Jordan Peterson. And recently there's a Q&A video from his talk in Cambridge that came out a couple weeks ago. And he was asked a question on the topic of victimhood. And what he was talking about doesn't really have anything to do with this conversation. But in terms of victimhood, he started using the example of his daughter, who had an illness, and how him and his wife did their best to help their daughter and to help her with the fact, help her with not being a victim. To help her to be stronger in her life and not use her illness as an excuse to do the things that she should do. Because she was young, she was going to school at the time, and they were trying to help her be like, don't use your illness as an excuse not to go to school or this or that. And he mentions how, it's difficult for a parent to do that because there's empathy, of course, and empathy is good, but there a certain degree of it. But he mentions, the empathy that destroys, and it just really stuck out to me. Actually, me and Lisa were watching it, and it stuck out to both of us. Just that idea of the empathy that destroys. And I think that is pretty relevant to this conversation. I understand where Chris is coming from. I understand any Christian who is like, oh, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings by saying what I believe, or by confronting them, or trying to correct them. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings because I have empathy. But the Bible actually does call us to correct each other in love. See, love isn't all just about feeling good and making other people feel good. Have you never heard of the term tough love? It's a thing, but it's still love. Because if you, like me, and maybe you're a person who doesn't really believe that things like transgenderism or homosexuality or anything involving that is a sin, that's not me. I just want to be open and clear about it, just right off the bat, because I don't want any subscribers or followers or whatever to, find that out later on down the line. I just want it to be clear. I do think that that's a sin. Homosexuality, transgenderism. If you are transgender out there and you're watching this, I want you to know that I do love you. I'm a Christian, and we're called to love everyone, but loving people is not always about making people feel good about themselves. I wouldn't want that for me. I struggle with my own sin, and I wouldn't want anyone in my life to. I prefer people to, the leaders in my life, to challenge me on my sin. Because sometimes we need that. We need other people to speak into our lives. And so, but I understand people who struggle with that. And I think it's a good conversation to have when it comes to this whole pronouns thing, because there's there's people, I mean, I like me, who feel like, well, if I agree to call this person by their preferred pronouns, I feel like I'm lying to them because I know it's not the truth. And I want to speak the truth into their lives because I don't want to be the cause for deception in their lives. I want them to know where I come from, and I want them to know the truth of what God's word says. But I think there is a conversation to be had when it comes to, we can talk about, okay, so I don't believe that transgenderism is okay. But I have a friend or a coworker or whoever who's transgender, and I want to talk to them, and I want to have these discussions, and it seems that they would be okay with it too, but the roadblock, the wall that's in between us is the fact that any time that I call them by their actual gender, it upsets them, and we can't have a normal conversation. We can talk about that. I don't think that everything about this subject is as black and white as a lot of people say it is, on both sides. Because maybe you have to do a little bit of compromising to just be able to have a conversation with someone. And because of course we don't want to be jerks. I'm not saying that people need to be like, no, you're a man, and you need to face that reality. Like, how is that going to help anything? There has to be a little bit of finesse. Stephen says, in love is an important point. It's often not what you say, but how you say it. It looked like Chris was responding to a comment made in a harsh, condemning manner. I can see that because that's just social media. People, in social media, people tend to be a bit more brave with their tone and the things that they say. And so I'm sure that Chris got a lot of angry messages, and that's not what I intend to do. I think he's wrong in many ways, but I understand where he's coming from. Steven says, absolutely, not black and white. Yeah, I guess that's just me. I'm black and white in a lot of things, but there are some things where I see the gray that some people don't. But I'm not shying away from the fact that there is truth. And that I think it's important that, say, if you do have a friend who is transgender, it is important that they should know where you stand. And they should realize that you're not comfortable with calling them something that they're not. Because they should know where you're coming from. But as long as they know that you're doing it in love, that is the important thing. Because, like I said, we don't want to be jerks. But we also want to stand for the truth. And so, but if our goal is to bring others to Christ and to speak the truth in other people's lives, maybe I think there might be some room, and I don't know. I'm not an expert. And I don't know if like someone like Doug Wilson would agree with me, but I think that maybe there does need to be a little bit of compromise when it comes to how we talk to members of the LGBTQ plus community. But it's not it should never come out of, the empathy that destroys, like I was saying. It should never come out of that. Like, the truth doesn't care. I'm gonna go whole Ben Shapiro mode, but facts don't care about your feelings, and it's true. But if we have to be delicate with it, then fine. Just to this is complicated. I guess what I'm trying to say is that the truth is important overall. The truth of God's word. I don't believe that truth is subjective, like the truth. Some things are subjective, but God's word is not. That's where I come from. The truth is important, and it's important that people know the truth and know that we stand on the truth. But when it comes to the conversation of pronouns, maybe there needs to be a little bit of compromise just to get the truth across. I don't know. When I say that, I feel weird saying that. This is why, this is just a conversation that we're having. And so, feel free to give me you guys' thoughts on that. Steven, this is complicated. I laughed out loud. Yeah. Yeah. And again, I want it to be clear that I do not, I'm a person who wants to be true to God's word. And so I believe that the Bible is very clear on subjects like these, that transgenderism, homosexuality, all that stuff, I think it's a sin. And we shouldn't let people believe that it's not. I just think that the whole conversation with pronouns is maybe a bit more complicated. I don't think that we should never, because it seemed that Chris was coming from the standpoint of like, you should never call someone what they don't want to be called. I don't see that. That's the like far. That's the extreme version of that conversation. I don't agree with that. I think people should know that, hey, I know that you identify this way, but that's not what I believe. But I still love you. That's the key, is that it all has to be in love, but not the whole like lovey-dovey, I don't want to hurt your feelings kind of love. That's not real love. That is the empathy that destroys. And we should not be silent on what we believe. But yeah, I think I'm getting to the end of this conversation because I feel like I'm kind of rambling. Because I do agree with Doug Wilson's that we should not shy away from the truth. But maybe there needs to be a little bit of, navigating when it comes to that. Because we don't want to be jerks. We don't want to turn people off. But again, sometimes that's just kind of what the truth does, and there's nothing that you can really do about that. You did your part. You spoke for the truth, and you did your best to do it in a loving way. But sometimes it's sometimes people just reject the truth. And that's where you did that all you could do. So yeah, I think that's all. Like I said, if you guys have any thoughts or comments about it at all, just feel free to leave a comment. But I think that's it. That's my response to the whole Chris Llewellyn thing. All right, quick music review. It's music review time. So we talked about Randy Stonehill at the beginning of this episode, and this this album has actually been out for a while, apparently. I think I saw that it was released on November of last year. At least that's what Google said. But on Spotify, it says 2022. So maybe it was released on Spotify later. But basically, this is a compilation album where a bunch of artists came together and covered their favorite Randy Stonehill songs. And it's called There's a Rainbow Somewhere. Songs of Randy Stonehill. And if you're a fan of Randy Stonehill, I definitely think that you will appreciate this album. I just think that this is a crazy project because they brought together such an interesting mix of musicians and artists that I like, or am at least familiar with. It's just so interesting because the different kinds of people that came together to make this project. It's just interesting. We got Phil Keaggy, legend right there, legendary Christian guitar player. Honestly, I think he's one of the best just in general, not even just Christian guitarist. I think he's a great guitarist in general. And I imagine that he was the one who put this together because he is the only one who did 2 songs. He did the first song and the last song, and which makes sense because I think he was the closest to Randy Stonehill, because they played together. But we got Phil Keaggy, we got Sarah Groves, we got Michael W. Smith, Jars of Clay. We got Sixpence None the Richer, Andrew Peterson. I'm a big Andrew Peterson fan. We got Tim Hawkins, the comedian. Got Kevin Max, Matthew Ward from Second Chapter of Acts, Amy Grant, Russ Taff, Michael Gungor, Steve Taylor, Lost Dogs, and so many others. And it's just I think it's actually with all these different artists, it's kind of incredible how solid the album is for the most part, because like this album kind of takes me back to the days of back in the day when this kind of album happened a lot, where a bunch of Christian artists would come together. I know there was one for Keith Green like over a couple decades ago, I feel like. And so, one of the problems with those kinds of projects, and it's just they haven't happened in a long time, I feel like, or at least they don't happen as often as they used to, is that they're not really that cohesive, of course, because you have different artists coming in and doing their own rendition of songs, or they're bringing their own sound to it, and it's just what it is. It's a compilation album, and it's a collection of different sounds and styles. But this one, and maybe it's just the fact that it's Randy Stonehill and his style is pretty, it's pretty obvious, very, for the most part with his music, very folky, very James Taylor-esque kind of. And so maybe it's like not really that possible to like change that too much, and that's why it sounds so cohesive. But even just with production, like I wonder if they all use the same producer or something. But yeah, really solid. I mean, of course, Randy Stonehill is a great songwriter, so excuse me. A lot of these songs are really great. My favorites are probably I love Jars of Clay's version because, of course, I'm a Jars of Clay fan. Tim Hawkins' song is actually pretty solid, even though he's a comedian. It's not like a joke song, of course, or anything. But it is one of Randy's more quirkier songs, so that's a good reason why he picked it. Andrew Peterson, I love his version. My favorite is probably Steve Taylor's Fire. It's just such a bombastic rendition of that song. And yeah, I highly recommend it. It's like a double album, so it's longer. So check it out. Steven says, we saw Stonehill in concert at ISU when he was about 19. Holy crap. I'm so excited for this project. Wow. Lucky you. What I wouldn't give to have seen that at ISU. Wow, crazy. That's really cool. So yeah, I definitely recommend to go check it out. I don't know when this album came out. I just only learned about it because the artists that I follow on Spotify, like Jars of Clay and Steve Taylor, it came up in my Spotify, and that was recently, and that was the first time I heard about this project. So maybe I'm late. I will say that the collection of artists is interesting because, you have these like obviously Christian artists like Michael W. Smith, which actually his song is not bad. I'm not really a Michael W. Smith fan, but like Michael W. Smith let go of his usual like CCM sound, and it's a lot more like alternative. This song he did, I've Got News for You, and it's not bad. But like people like Kevin Max and Michael Gungor, I know Kevin Max is now technically a Universalist Christian, and just in my opinion, that's not really that doesn't really fit with what I think that the gospel is. But I still love Kevin Max's music. Very talented guy. But same for Michael Gungor. I think I heard that he's not even a Christian anymore. So, but I digress. It's still a great collection of songs, and so it's cool that people like Michael Gungor and Kevin Max can still like acknowledge the legacy of Randy Stonehill. So, yeah. Also, Lisa, I'm going to get to your comments in a little bit. Because I'm sorry I moved on to reviews. But we can talk about that in the Q&A section. Okay, so Randy Stonehill, There's a Rainbow Somewhere. John Van Dusen is I'm a fan of his. He came out with a couple singles. And I discovered John Van Dusen. He has a new album coming out. And it's gosh, I can't really even see that. He has a new album coming out, and a couple singles that he released to promote it, and it's pretty solid stuff. Uninspired Blowing Smoke is the first single, and it's good. It's a decent jam. But I think I'm a bigger fan of Be Not Far From Here. It's a bit more personal and like acoustic. Like the first song is like a rock jam, but Be Not Far From Here is more of an acoustic, almost kind of worshipful kind of song. But I highly recommend you guys check that out. John Van Dusen. That's Deusen. And then our friend John Mark McMillan came out with Atlanta. It's a new single from him, and I still don't know if he's doing an album or not, but he's just popping out singles. And Atlanta is just a fun groove. I love the saxophone in it, and I've already said that I love John Mark McMillan's usual production decisions and choices. So Atlanta is just another one that I approve of, and I think is really solid. So yeah, I think that's it for music reviews. I think now we are going to go into our Q&A section of the episode. This might end up being a longer episode, so I hope that's okay. I guess I never really set out with a specific time, but it just so happens that all the episodes so far have been about an hour and a half, but we might go longer today. Which is fine because answering you guys' questions is important to me. Okay. I know Steven had a question for me from the last episode. But I think I may want to try to unpack Lisa's comments and questions here from today. First, so Lisa says, I wonder at the suicide rate of transgender teens. Many are struggling with these strong feelings and with accepting themselves. I wonder if there's a way of offering acceptance without compromising on truth, because feelings are sometimes stronger than knowledge of truth. My heart goes out to those teens because some would rather look on their graves with loving eyes than be plagued by these strong feelings. Data indicates that 82% of transgender individuals have considered killing themselves and 40% have attempted suicide, with suicidality highest among transgender youth. That's from the National Library of Medicine. Yeah, so there is a lot to unpack here, and I will, again, I will say that I'm not an expert. I'm not a biologist. Sorry. From my perspective, what these people are struggling with is a mental problem. I'm sorry, I have to say that, because if I think that, a man is a man and a woman is a woman and you can't change those things, I obviously believe that anyone who thinks that they are someone that they are not has a problem. And it's a mental problem. So, and I know that some people like to bring up these suicidal statistics and blame it on acceptance. There's no evidence directly pointing to that. I mean, I don't doubt that that's probably the case with some people. But I know I have heard stories of people who did transition in their lives and they later ended up regretting it. And so I'm trying to be as delicate as possible. My heart definitely goes out to those people as well. The hurt that they are going through, and I'm also hurting for the fact that they're dealing with the consequences of their decisions. They've made a drastic change in their life, and many of them probably feel like that they can't go back. There's a documentary I saw. I can't remember what it was called. It was a YouTube video. It was a long YouTube video, and it was conversations with former trans people who, they transitioned, they had the surgery, and then they later ended up regretting it. And some of them transitioned back. And it was just really interesting to hear their story. And some of them that they talked to, they did the surgery and they can't go back from that. And they regret that they did that. And so, what am I trying to say here is that, let's see, your original question, I wonder if there's a way of offering acceptance without compromising on truth. I mean, yes, I mean, I feel like that I already addressed that, is that we do need to be loving and we don't need to be jerks. I think there's a way that we can show love to people without, like you said, compromising our truth. I think it is important that those people feel safe and know that they are loved. But the problem is that, especially in this day and age, is that a lot of people interpret love and acceptance meaning you need to agree with everything that I believe. And I don't think that's true. But a lot of people, unfortunately, believe that. And I just don't think that's true. I think that there are a lot of Christians who have really tried their best to be loving and caring to people, members of the LGBTQ plus community, but unfortunately for a lot of those people, it's not enough. And that's the problem. I do think that it's possible to be loving towards those people. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. I do think that it's possible to be loving and accepting of those people without compromising the truth. But it's for some people, it's just not possible. And there's really nothing else that you can do about it. And it's a complicated issue that I don't know a lot about. All I know is the truth of the matter. What we can do to help them, I'm not sure. Except for to speak the truth. And Deborah says it might also be a spiritual and or emotional problem too. Absolutely. I'm sure there's a lot of them that they've made the decisions that they've made because there's a lot of hurt in their lives. And I sympathize with that. Well, not sympathize, I guess empathize is the right word. I totally understand. I mean, we live in a broken world and faced with a lot of hurt. But that doesn't change the fact that we're sinners, and we all are in need of a savior. We all are in need of grace. And we're all called to lay down our fleshly desires and our sin at the foot of the cross. For some people, it's going to be harder than others. And that's all I feel that I can really say about that. In terms of like the suicide rates, it breaks my heart, honestly. I don't like that. But I think there is a conversation to be had about whether is it about because they're not being accepted or loved, or is it because they're having mental problems, and so suicide for some reason seems to be a way out of that. I don't know. That's another thing where I don't think that it's black and white. I think it's a pretty gray area, but I also don't think that suicide rates are a reason to and I'm not saying that you're saying this. I don't think that suicide rates are a reason to not speak the truth still. And we've already talked about it. Be loving while you're doing it. And I think we need to do our best to save lives, of course, both physically and spiritually. But that doesn't mean that we resort back to like what I was talking about earlier, the empathy that destroys. I pray that I was coherent enough in answering that question. It's a very, very complicated issue, and I don't know everything about it, but all I know is that like my calling is to stand on the truth of God's word and what is true. And yeah, so I said something useful right there. But thanks so much for the question, and yeah, I hope that made sense. Okay, so my good friend Steven, who I believe is still here, still in the chat, he had a question, a long and complicated question, but it doesn't have anything to do with what we've been talking about. We're switching gears. We're switching gears here. So I hope that's okay. First of all, you did mention in your comment that you discovered Grey Havens on Spotify. Would be interested in your thoughts on this Christian narrative pop band. Crap, I totally forgot to prepare for this question. I know the name Grey Havens. I mean, of course, they've taken inspiration from Tolkien. But I know of this band's existence. And actually, I might have jammed out to at least one of their songs. Because I do know their name, and I know that they exist. Okay, I guess not. Let's hold on. I should have just taken a listen to before. Actually, this is a good idea. If you guys have any suggestions for music for me to listen to, I'll definitely listen to it and maybe talk about it on the episode. Okay, yeah, I can't say that I'm familiar with every song of theirs. I guess it looks like it's one guy, judging from their profile picture. But I'm familiar with them, and I don't remember them being bad. That's all I can really say. But I will definitely have to check them out more. And I'm glad that you found an artist that you like, hopefully. So, but getting to your main question on here, I would also be interested in hearing your thoughts on the quality of Christian artists in general, filmmakers, musicians, novelists, etc. What's good, what's bad, what is acceptable in the way of controversial content, and what is unacceptable, and what can be done to improve. Personally, I think, well, I don't want to lead you, although I have some pretty strong feelings. Thanks, Steven. I'm sure you do. I have some pretty strong feelings as well, and I haven't been silent on these things on this YouTube channel when it comes to Christians in arts and entertainment. So the quality of Christian artists in general. So I think that there are certain avenues of entertainment that Christians excel at. And I'm not kidding. Music, actually. I think Christians have done a great job at making great music. The only problem is, excuse me, I burped, is that the good stuff doesn't get into the mainstream. It doesn't get into... The good stuff doesn't normally get played on Christian radio, and it doesn't get the attention, it doesn't get all the views, unfortunately. But that's kind of also the case with secular music, that the good stuff, subjectively, the good stuff, doesn't get the spotlight as much either. Martin Scorsese is a good director in the Christian world. Thanks, Lisa. I mean, yes, he made Silence, which is, in my opinion, I know it's a controversial film, but I personally love it. But you also got to consider Martin Scorsese. I mean, I love him as a director, but he did Goodfellas and The Wolf of Wall Street, and those aren't movies that I would recommend to a Christian audience. So, but yeah, I'm sure you're just, I think you're just making a joke, Lisa. But yeah, music, I think Christians have done a great job at. It's just unfortunate that, in my opinion, all the good stuff doesn't get the attention it deserves, which is what I try to do, is try to bring attention to the good stuff Movies. Going back to movies, Scorsese is probably so good because he doesn't push an agenda. Yeah, I would agree. I watched an interesting video that was talking about the faith, his faith that he puts into all his movies, and it's really interesting. It's not just the more obvious ones like Last Temptation of Christ or Silence, which I got to say I'm not really I personally am not a fan with the direction he went with Last Temptation of Christ, but I digress. But even in his films like Goodfellas, he does consider himself having a Christian background, though. Yes, it's true. He is a Catholic. I guess I'm trying to differentiate between a filmmaker who is making Christian movies for the Christian market and a filmmaker who is Christian who just makes movies, which I generally prefer. But usually when it comes to like actual Christian movies, like, you know, God's Not Dead's out there and all those kinds of movies, Christians kind of suck at making movies. Usually anything that you will look for in a Christian bookstore, any movies, they're generally pretty bad, and it's sad. I'm very sad to say. I guess as Lisa says, I guess I've only seen Silence. I love that movie. I do too. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. But I would not recommend Wolf of Wall Street to be played at a church, or like I wouldn't recommend you play that for any of your Christian friends. You know, I mean, I like that movie. But it's something. But for the most part, Christian movies that are made for the Christian market are not good. There are movies that are made by secular studios, like Silence, that have like Christian messages to them. But are generally just kind of marketed to general audiences. But those aren't always what I think about when it comes to like Christian movies. I guess Christian movie is a very vague term. Lisa says, I liked the Amazing Grace movie about William Wilberforce. That's sold at Christian bookstores. True. Yes. I remember that being a good movie. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but I remember it being good. The thing is that was made by a secular studio and marketed to mainstream audiences, as was another movie that I remember liking called Luther. I think that was made by MGM, and it stars what was that guy's name? I forget his name. I also appreciated War Room when I saw it. That's a Kendrick Brothers film, I believe, with Facing the Giants, the people who made Facing the Giants and Fireproof. I'm generally not really a fan of those kinds of movies, to be honest. But I mean, it's cool if you like them. But yeah, so basically what I'm trying to say, and I'm sorry to anyone listening if I'm being or watching that I'm being distracted by the chat. I really should say when it's people that are talking. I guess I bet I sound like that I have like the biggest ADHD problem. I don't. But I think I guess what I'm trying to say is that Christians could do better at making movies. I have my friend Say Goodnight Kevin, who talks about a lot of those like Christian movies and such. And also, me and my friend Mitchell made a video that I'm editing right now, where we watch 3 different Christian movies and talk about whether they're good or not. So keep an eye out for that. But yeah, filmmakers, I think that we could do better. Christian filmmakers, I think we could do better. I don't know why it's been so hard for like an actual Christian movie to be good. And I'm not talking about the Silences out there or the Amazing Graces. I'm talking about movies that are made by Christian studios and Christian filmmakers that are targeted towards Christian audiences. They generally aren't good, in my opinion. You also got musicians. I already talked about musicians. There's a lot of great ones out there, and I talk about a lot of them on the show. You also mentioned novelists, which is interesting. That is a avenue of entertainment that I also think that Christians tend to excel at. I mean, of course, you still got your bad ones. You got your like weird Christian romance ones, which I guess I never read, so I guess I can't really say much on that. But aside from the obvious, like, C.S. Lewis, great mind, and he made great not just nonfiction, but and not even just the Chronicles of Narnia, but he has also other great works of fiction, like the Space Trilogy, Out of the Silent Planet, and the Screwtape Letters, and The Great Divorce. All great, amazing works of fiction that I highly recommend. But of course, everyone talks about C.S. Lewis. I haven't read a lot lately. I used to read a lot more than I do now, but I was always a fan of Ted Dekker. I think he's a masterful writer for the most part. He has some great books that were always my favorites. I loved his Circle series. I'm trying to reread it now, but the Circle series I think is amazing and should be turned into a movie, as long as you have the right studio and the right amount of money, because it's kind of like a modern day Lord of the Rings sort of. So Ted Dekker, I haven't read a lot of Frank Peretti, but I have, and of course he is really good. Deborah says, I love my Christian romances. Well, that's great, because I mean, Christians need their romance too. So I just haven't read any of it. So Ted Dekker, Frank Peretti, someone that I loved was Stephen Lawhead. One of my favorite books ever was his King Raven trilogy, which is a reimagining of the story of Robin Hood. Incredible trilogy. And Lisa says, Mom reads a lot of Amish books. Hey, I get it. I'm very attracted to the Amish lifestyle, and sometimes I wish I was Amish. So I can understand that. So yeah, Stephen Lawhead, and he usually writes books on like medieval times and such. That's kind of his expertise, and so of course, I'm a big fan of that. So yeah, those are some novelists that I'm most familiar with. I also used to read some like young adult, targeted towards young audiences, fantasy books, like Robert Liparulo. He wrote I think it's called the Gatekeeper series. There's Donita K. Paul. She wrote the Dragon Keeper Chronicles. There is Wayne Thomas Batson. But those are more for younger audiences, and that's just kind of what I read back in the day. Steven says, Lawhead is one of my all-time favorites. Of course, because he shares your name. But yeah, also, by the way, my friend Steven, who's in the chat, Steven Larson, is also a writer. So if I can't remember the name of your book or your books, but if you want to give yourself a shameless plug, go ahead and drop it in the chat, and I will give you a shout out for sure. Lisa says, Tolkien is a masterful Christian author. Yes, I guess that's also. J.R.R. Tolkien, of course, was a devout Catholic, and devout Christian, and was actually very played a hand in C.S. Lewis's conversion into Christianity. So yes, I guess I just, don't get me wrong, I love Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. I guess I just kind of shied away from mentioning them because those are books that g- general audiences, for the most part, have been able to enjoy. And it's not like Tolkien was like as outright about his Christianity as C.S. Lewis was with his Chronicles of Narnia. But yes, of course, Tolkien is a masterful writer. He was. He's probably up in heaven still writing stuff. But yeah, Tolkien as well. What's good, what's bad? I think I kind of already mentioned that. What is acceptable in the way of, quote, controversial content, and what is unacceptable, and what can be done to improve? Controversial content. I think that's very interesting. Because even though I am, Steven says acoustic words, short stories and poems available through Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Mind Games, and the Mind Games is another book, and the Eros Variations are undergoing revisions. So yeah, definitely go check out Acoustic Words by Stephen Larson on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles. Thanks, Stephen. So controversial. This is an interesting thing to think about, because even though I think it's maybe my creative and alternative mindset that I have, is that I'm perfectly okay with Christian content pushing the boundaries. I mean, I think that that's kind of the idea of art. I think there is a line that is too far. When Christian content pushes beyond the points of, I guess, orthodoxy, I think is a problem. But I guess it depends on what your opinion on orthodoxy is. In my opinion, if anything goes against the Apostles' Creed, I think that's a good reference point, then it's probably a problem. I don't agree when if Christian content says anything other than what the gospel actually is. You know, if a singer is saying that Jesus didn't die for our sins, or that hell doesn't exist, or that any universalist ideas or whatever, I think that's a problem. Anything else, Lisa says, is The Last Temptation of Christ too far? I think so. I watched it recently for the first time, and I really tried to like it, but I just couldn't get past it. And if you guys aren't familiar with The Last Temptation of Christ, it's a very different interpretation of who Jesus was. It's a very human and flawed characterization of Jesus. And I tried to get into it. I tried to see where Martin Scorsese was coming from, but I just couldn't get past it. I found it to be kind of offensive, and I don't want to be those people that are shutting down Martin Scorsese. I'm not. I just think that it was very misguided. A very misguided navigation of who Jesus was. Lisa says, so basically Rob Bell has gone too far. Yes, but also he's that's nonfiction. That's not, for me, that's not really entertainment. But yes, and I try my best not to seem like a heresy hunter or anything, but I think that a lot of what Rob Bell teaches is heretical. So, but I'm kind of trying to keep more along the lines of art, not like teachings or entertainment, you know. But yeah, anything along those lines is fine. But I wanted to give an example of a piece of art that I think is pretty controversial, but I actually appreciate. So there's a band, or was a band, called Showbread. They were a tooth and nail band. They had a very unique sound. They were kind of hardcore and punkish, but they were also like very quirky in their sound. They use a lot of synthesizers and such. I was a fan, and their last album, which actually I'm thinking of doing a video on, so there's a little hint right there. But they had, for their last album, it was called Showbread is Show Dead. And they had a song on it that I only kind of just realized what it was really about. But it's called Dear John Piper. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a fan of John Piper for the most part. But it's pretty well known that John Piper is a Calvinist. I'm not. However, there's a lot of people who claim to be Calvinists that I have a lot of respect for, because usually those kinds of people really value the scriptures and their authority. I just don't agree with Calvinism and what it teaches, and neither did Showbread. And they made a song that was anti-Calvinist, and I was like, wow, that's pretty bold. Like, I highly recommend you check it out. I mean, maybe it's not your kind of music, but like at least check out the lyrics. I think it's very interesting, very bold, and it's like that kind of controversial thing. I'm all about. I'm all about like the things that are more like secondary kind of like doctrinal things. I think there's a lot of room for art to explore those ideas. So I mean, that's an example that I can think of. Debbie says, I would say to go by the verse. What is true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, excellent, or praiseworthy? Yeah. I would say that that's a good roadmap to go by. I just feel like I was saying with the whole Calvinist thing, that there's plenty of topics to explore in Christianity. There have been examples, I think, of movies and music and such that have tried to push the boundaries of like what is family friendly, you know, and that's something else that we talked about in that me and Mitchell talk about in the video that I'm working on. We talk about a couple Christian movies that have language in it and some cussing and such. And I can have a whole conversation about what I think about language and cussing, because for me, it changes all the time. What is considered a bad word and what is not. I mean, we used to, back in the day, the word swell used to be a bad word. So, I think that there's some discussion to be had on like, you know, what makes a bad word a bad word. For me, it's more about like, what is the heart behind what you're saying rather than the word that you're saying. Because either way, you know, we're not okay with saying the S word, but we're okay with saying crap. But it basically means the same thing. But anyways, I'm not going to try to go down that rabbit hole. I personally am not offended if like a Christian movie or music uses that, especially when it comes to trying to be more realistic. Because a movie that we talk about in this video that I'm working on is To Save a Life. And the movie is trying to create an accurate picture of what high school life is like. And the truth is that people cuss at high school. And I don't personally have a problem with that. It all matters. What is the intention behind it? You know, what is the purpose of it? And if it has a purpose, I think that there's room for that. I mean, of course, not everyone is okay with that. Not everyone is okay with certain words, and I think that's fine. But I personally leave a little bit more room for that. And some people may disagree with me, and I think that's totally fine. I just don't get really up in arms about that kind of thing. So, Stephen says, even that is open up to interpretation. I think he's talking about the scripture. Would the language, themes, etc. of the Song of Solomon, the story of Lot and his daughters, etc. be accepted by all under those terms? Not wanting to argue, just acknowledging the difficulty of understanding the boundaries. That is true. And I think that's another thing when it comes to sex. I mean, just to preface, I do believe in, saving yourself for marriage. But I think Christians can just get a little bit too uppity about things. Like they don't want to talk about sex, and they don't want to, think about it or anything. But, if the Bible were made into a movie and accurately, it would be rated R, not just because of the violence in it, but also because of some of the sexual content that's in it, Song of Solomon is very descriptive. And so, and I'm not saying that movies need to have nudity in their movies, of course not, because that can be a stumbling block. But when it comes to addressing those topics, I think sorry, sometimes when I look at the chat, I lose my train of thought, so I apologize. But I think that there's a little bit of a room for that as well to be discussed. Like, for instance, in To Save a Life, the movie To Save a Life, there is a scene where it is insinuated that the main character, who is not a Christian at this point, has sex with his girlfriend at a party. I think a lot of Christians would be upset about that. Now, to be fair, it doesn't show anything, but for me, it's like, yeah, that is an accurate representation of, what flawed humans do. And so I think that that's also, I'm not totally against that. Again, the intention is important. That's what's important to me. Now, of course, if a Christian movie was going all out, American Pie, and just all that, then of course, no. We do need to have a certain standard. But when it comes to movies or music or whatever, exploring the brokenness of humanity, I think that that's worth exploring. Lisa says, Hillsong Young and Free. Dylan was right. The times they are changing. LOL. Pushing the boundary of worship music. Yeah, I would say that worship music for me is one thing that you don't want to push the boundaries, because I don't know. That's just how I feel about that. And what she was referencing, if you guys have not seen my video reviewing Hillsong Young and Free's All of My Best Friends, there's an actual line in that song, and it's supposed to be a worship song, that says, Dylan was right. The times they are changing, in a worship song. But also, for me, also, that's not just pushing the boundaries. That's just bad writing. So, but yeah, that's very funny. Lisa also says, Mumford & Sons, Christians cussing. That's true. That's another thing, going back to the topic of really cussing in language, when you think about it, is determined by society. And here I go into a speech of oh, we truly live in a society. No, I mean, but it's true, because if you talk to someone from England, they'll tell you that the F word is not as offensive to them over there. And so Mumford & Sons, who is led by Marcus Mumford, who is a Christian, and his parents are ministers, they have a couple songs where they say the F word. And to them, it's not offensive. And the way that they're using it, too, is not really... the intent behind it is not to be... they're not being sexual or anything about it. It's really just... It would be as if you and me, when we say frick, it's just this. It's just the same thing, but it's a different word, I mean, of course, if you use it in a certain way, it can be sexual, but like, if we're not okay with the F word, then we shouldn't be saying frick either. But I don't know. I could have a whole video on that, but that's not what my channel is about. Steven says, I still cringe a bit when a Christian says sucks because of the sexual roots. When you get 1,000 viewers all commenting at once, you're really going to get distracted. Oh, yeah. It's true. But yeah, Christians are okay with saying sucks. But do you even know where that came from? Like what the innuendo is? But we're okay with saying it. I think there was a time at the beginning where people weren't, but somehow we just became okay with it. And that's just what happens with society, is that my prediction is that hell is of a little while from now, hell is not going to be considered a cuss word. I mean, for me, honestly, I don't even really know why it is. I don't know why it's offensive to say, like, what the hell? But that's the thing. It's going to change. And for me, I think I just go back to the words of our Savior. I'm trying to remember. He says something along the lines of, like, you have heard that if someone says to someone raka, I think that was the word, which was basically an offensive term back then. If someone says raka, then they are condemned to the fires of hell. But I tell you, if you go to someone and say, you fool, you are just as condemnable. And that's where I go to when it comes to language. And for me, I don't think it's about the word. I don't think it's about a certain 4-letter word. It's more of the intention behind it. Are we being hateful in what we are saying? I don't think that saying a certain 4-letter word in a different context is condemnable as a sin. I don't know. I mean, you guys may disagree, and that's fine. I've made a decision not to cuss on this channel because I want it to be, I want anyone to be able to watch this show or listen to it. And I understand that people get offended at certain things. And so I want to be as inclusive as possible, of course, without compromising what I believe. But I don't know. I guess that's just my opinion. And I just came out with it with this question from Steven. Lisa says, this is a good point. Are we being hateful in what we are saying? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. What can we done to improve? Just real quick, and I'll end this show soon. Thank you guys for sticking with me for so long. I know it's a longer episode, but I think that this is something that I've already addressed in multiple different videos on my channel, but I'll just give like the shortened version of what I've always said. In terms of creativity and art, I just think that there needs to be a pursuit of excellence. And I'm not saying perfection because we're humans and we're never perfect. But I just think that Christians, that if they're doing this for God, then we really should be trying to put our best creative foot forward and doing our best to show, to represent the beauty of Christ, the beauty of what he has done, and do our best to express that through our music. And I think that that's a noble effort. I mean, there was a time where I feel like Christians were really great at that when it comes to like famous paintings and such. Like a lot of those were done because the artist was trying to glorify God. And I feel like that we've lost that a little bit. I feel like that we've had a little bit of a compromise because so many Christian artists are trying to make music for for the crowd rather than for glorifying God. And I just think that we need to get back to that. And granted, I'm sure there are a lot of artists out there, a lot of filmmakers, a lot of musicians who really think that they're trying their best, and I think that's great. But ultimately, a lot of what I see a lot of God's Not Deads, of just poor examples of filmmaking. And I see a lot of Chris Tomlin's, nothing against Chris Tomlin, but just like his music is just very lackluster. And so, yeah, I just think we need to get back to being awe-inspired by God and what he has done. You know, he's created this world, he's created this universe, which is, you know, that's enough to praise him for, but also like what he has done in his love by dying on the cross for us. I think that's something to aspire to when it comes to expressing our praise to him in our art. And that's what I think. Okay, just a couple more comments that are in the chat, and then we'll get going. Steven says, I guess this is going back to the language thing. I can't stand a Christian chanting, "Let's go, Brandon," not because of the politics, but because of the hateful intent behind it. No, I absolutely agree. Just being fully transparent, I am not a Biden fan. You know, I voted for Trump in the last election, but while the "Let's Go Brandon" thing, the whole situation behind that is funny, for me, it's still very distasteful. And I actually know a lot of conservative Christians who believe that as well. So "Let's Go Brandon" is just another way of saying F Joe Biden. And I don't see the Christian love in that. I don't like Biden, but I think it's my duty as a Christian to pray for him and to still be loving towards him in some way. So yeah, I agree. Steven says, Bach is the ultimate example. He sought to glorify God and change the whole face of music in the process. No, yeah, I totally agree with you. Lisa says also Michelangelo with the Sistine Chapel. Yeah, exactly. Those are the kinds of people that I had in mind. Some people may look back at classical music and be like, oh, it's just boring old people, white music, you know. But there's still like a beauty to it, and you're right. Bach changed a lot about music, and yeah. How can we get back to that? How can we get back to that attitude of just being like, I love God, God is amazing, and I want to try to show my best by painting this or like this beautiful orchestra. You can do that even if you're just a guy who plays guitar. Strive for excellence because that glorifies God. Not perfection. You don't need perfection, but yeah. Anyways, I already said what I was going to say about that. So anyways, with all that, I hope that answers your question. This is a very, very complicated question. And also just thank you for checking out the podcast. I know one of the last times we spoke, you said that you weren't sure if you were going to have time to be able to check it out because you were listening to the Podwood Forecast. So I appreciate that you've attempted to do that, and I hope that you'll stick around for more episodes. And the same to you guys. So we're going to close it out now. Again, if you guys have any comments or questions, you can leave them in this video. you can leave it in this video or in the comments section, and we'll talk about it in the next episode for Q&A. I wanted to say, well, first of all, I just wanted to thank a lot of you guys who are watching this and who are watching the show. Just recently, we've reached over 250 subscribers, and I think that's awesome. Thank you guys so much. I know that's not like PewDiePie levels of subscribers, but that's totally okay, because like I can't imagine 250 people in one room just watching my content, and that's just crazy to me. What's even more crazy is that I just saw YouTube notified me that we've reached 30,000 views on all my videos, and I just think that's super cool. So thank you guys so much for all your support. Like I said, I've been working on this video that me and Mitchell did, and it's really fun. It's a long video, but I think it's going to be worth it. It's definitely shorter than this episode, so if that'll tell you anything. And I'm super excited about it, and I think I'm crossing my fingers. I'm pretty sure it'll be out next weekend. So, because I'm like just a few minutes away from finishing the video, and then I need to, render it and then get it up on YouTube, and hopefully YouTube doesn't block it for any copyright reasons. So fingers crossed, guys. I'll have a new video next weekend. Not an I'm Clifford Today episode, an actual YouTube video that I recorded and edited. So if it is out next weekend, the next episode of the I'm Clifford Today show, I'm going to be talking about it and like giving my thoughts about it and taking you guys' questions and reading you guys' comments on the video. And it's going to be fun. If for some reason it's not able to be out next weekend, then maybe I'll talk about the Jesus Music documentary. I still need to see that, but it's out on Hulu, so I want to watch it and talk about it. So we'll see. We'll see what we talk about. Yeah, so keep an eye out for that, and hopefully that's what it will be. 1 second before. Okay, I think we're good. We're gonna end it now, and hopefully there's not an echo like there has been before. But yeah, this has been a long episode, and I'm really glad that you guys are here. I'm super grateful for you, and yeah. So I'm Clifford Today show. Be sure to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. I'll give you a shout out on the show if you do that. Much appreciated. You can also leave a rating on Spotify. And on Spotify, you can check out questions and polls on Spotify. And we'll talk about those results in the next episode. So yeah. Also, for those of you who don't know, I have another podcast called Podwood Forecast that I do with my friend Mitchell. We talk about movies, music, things that we like, whatever. We just did an episode on there's no echo. Okay, good. We just did an episode on Batman movies and our favorite Batman movies and such, and especially the new Batman movie. So go check that out. Also, just be sure to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. And like I said, new video coming out very soon, hopefully next weekend. Until then, I'll see you guys in the next episode. Also, happy Resurrection Sunday. Happy Easter. I'll see you guys later.